Aaron from Oklahoma, who says the Bible itself is the evidence for God. Aaron, are you there? Hello, Aaron. You should be on now.
Are you there?
Yes.
Are you there?
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
You think the Bible itself is the evidence for God? Talk us through that one.
Well, my basic argument is that as far as a work of literature goes, the Bible itself is a kind of a unique production in one sense, and that is because it's written by a hodgepodge of various writers, and a lot of which are anonymous, and we don't know who wrote certain books, and it's basically just a group project. Okay, so now if you know anything about great literature, you know that great works of literature are never written via group project. And it's a very unique thing.
Except for the Bible.
Well, not only the Bible, we'll come on to that in a minute, but go on. Carry on.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't interrupt.
Yeah, I mean, of course, if someone were to say, well, the Bible, well, that's circular because the Bible is the work that is under contention. So I would ask for like evidence outside of that as far as a great work of literature that is written via group project. And
the Bible isn't okay. Let me stop you there real quick, because I contest that the Bible is a single great work of literature.
Yeah.
There are so many different textual forms in it. There are so many different styles in it. It is not a single great work of literature. It is considered a great work of literature because 1,500 years ago. And a little time before that, a lot of people put this thing together, and because of its importance to kind of human history, because of the belief people have in it, it is acquired over time this idea of it being a great work of literature. Just like, incidentally, the Tipitaka, the Buddhist holy text, which is 11 times longer than the Bible, and was written by multiple people, many of whom we don't know the names of. So it's certainly that being on its own doesn't make it a great work of literature, and it's certainly not exclusively so.
Well, as far as it being a great work of literature, regardless of whether you think it's fiction or nonfiction, whether you particularly like it or not, it is a great work of literature, because if you say no, you have to explain why it sold 5 billion copies and is the greatest selling book in the history of the world. I mean,
not really.
That doesn't make it a great work of literature. Different. The Sun newspaper sells many and other rags sell many thousands of copies on a daily basis. And they are not great works of literature by any means. Simply selling many copies does not make you a great work of literature.
And do you remember the thing that Richard and I said after the last call? You might not have heard it, but there is actually a claim in the Quran. There's a challenge that is often brought by Muslim apologists who say, if anybody can but bring a text that is written like the Quran, then you will disprove the Quran because it's the only thing that's written like it. It's so special. It's so amazing. It's so unique. Nothing else in the world is like it. And they include the Bible in that nothing else. So it just kind of sounds like you're making the exact same claim as the Muslims. And in either scenario, I don't even know what you're asking for. Like you're asking for another book that is as good as the Bible or the Quran. I just genuinely don't understand what this challenge is. And I don't understand how it indicates your point that just because we have a book like that somehow this is the demonstration that a deity is real.
Yeah, and real quick, just to piggyback on the back of Aaron, just real quick, so I just want to get some clarification. Just to piggyback on the back of what SR said as well. What specific criteria are you giving that makes it a great work of literature in your eyes? What is the criteria that makes a great work of literature?
Well, if you know very much about literature, you will find that the Bible occupies a very singular spot. It doesn't sell thousands of copies like your newspaper analogy. It's in the billions, 5 billion. It's the best-selling
How many
book in
Qurans
the
have been
world. That's
sold?
indisputable.
How many Qurans have been sold?
I think two or 3 billion. I think I'm not sure exactly, but I know.
So with the Muslim population increasing at the believing Muslim population increasing at a faster pace than the other religions in the world, more individuals will need to buy more Qurans to teach and study the word of Allah. So when the Quran surpasses the number of books sold by the Bible, will you now become a believing Muslim and make these claims for the Quran?
I'll wait for that to happen. I'll wait for that to happen.
But you will, is what you're saying. I just want to know, you will do that. You will convert to Islam, and when that happens, you will do that, right? Or you're saying no, you won't, because that criteria isn't important when it comes to determining whether things are true.
Well, that's not the only criterion. Okay, what was the
yes or no? You are converting to Islam whenever the Quran sells more than the Bible, or you're being inconsistent, and this argument really isn't as important.
It has many different writers. Yes,
the Quran has many different writers.
It sells more.
Yeah, Quran has many different writers
mainly
in the same book.
Muhammad
didn't know how to write. It's literally in the Quran. Muhammad was illiterate. Couldn't have been Muhammad.
Well,
was multiple scribes. So
he did not dictate it.
So that's the story, but we have good evidence. We have good evidence to indicate that he probably did not. For instance, the palimpsest. What's the description? Where was it found? Shoot, I'm sorry, but literally a palimpsest is a text that has written on it, and then somebody came later and then wrote over that original text. So we have that of the Quran from a long time ago, which indicates that there are differences, meaning that the work has obviously been changed over the years, therefore multiple authors and writers and stuff. And again, there's the challenge about there's nothing else in the world like it. So it literally sounds like you're on the same footing as all the Muslims. And I guess I'm just wondering, what makes you choose the Bible?
I thought that Muhammad was the primary dictator. If he didn't,
that's the story. The story says Muhammad was the primary dictator, but there's even work now to indicate that Muhammad might not have actually been a person, that the term Muhammad is actually something similar to like the term Christ, which is just a title. It's just something you call everybody king, everybody's Caesar.
Is it okay if I just ask you a few questions, if that's okay?
That's Richard. Richard's in charge today, Aaron. So I'm just the dickhead next to him.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm still not sure what your criteria is for, because you seem to say selling a lot of copies is a criteria for a great book. But let's leave that aside and kind of go on to the next thing. Yeah, go on, Gish Gallopers. Give us your next bit, Aaron.
Okay. Is the Bible a work of nonfiction or fiction in your view?
I don't think it's exclusively one or the other. I don't think it's
I
exclusively
agree.
one
I agree
or
with
the
this.
other. I think there's elements of both throughout it.
So it doesn't lean one way or the other in your mind?
Correct, because it's written in so many different styles. There are aspects of it that are written in a more documentary style, and there are aspects of it that are written in a poetry style. There are aspects of written that are clearly written in a mythological style, like an Aesop's fable trying to get a point across. Like, these things are all throughout it. So to just say that the Bible is just this one monolith, I think is problematic. And I've said this already, but I think this is, again, another concept that comes exclusively from religion. Like, I don't find many non-religious people that just make this claim of like, the Bible is bad, or like, the Bible is wrong, because it's just super duper black and white, man. And that's the world we live in is just more nuanced and complicated than that. And when you understand the history of how the Bible came to be, I think it's just you step away from that, oh, the Bible's all fake, or the Bible's all myth, because you recognize that there are parts of it that are actually accurate. Like, of course, but they're just trivial parts. They're just talking about a city.
One last question.
Okay.
One last question.
It's Richard's show. He's not stopping you,
go
so
on.
I'd say go for
on,
it, Aaron.
It's fine. Go.
Okay, well, okay. So the fact that it's sold 5 billion copies and is the
Means
best-selling work in the history of the world, does that make it in any way singular?
No. Because the 5 billion copies are not the King James version. When they say that number, I know this because the largest Christian printing, or one of the largest Christian publishing houses, is based in my state. So I've been to their headquarters. But they include all the versions of the Bible. So A, that's a good start right there. But then B, here's another thing that's really super duper important, which is at the time at which movable type was created, because Gutenberg didn't actually invent the printing press. That was done many a year ago in China. But what Gutenberg did was he created this concept of just making individual letters that you can just rearrange quicker. So that allowed for things to be printed much easier, right? The only book in circulation at the time was the Bible. So what else were we going to print? This is why we have the Enlightenment after the Gutenberg printing press, is because what they started doing is they started then going back and finding all of the Greek and Roman philosophers and stuff and republishing their work. But to show the proof of their concept to begin with, they printed the only thing that was available to them. So you've got all those numbers on your hand too.
Okay, just my final thought to kind of complete it and bring it around full circle was that my point is that God is the unifying vision for the Bible. Even though it's basically a group project, a lot of anonymous, it's all over the place as far as authorship and who did it. Mm-hmm. All great works require a unifying vision, a single unifying vision. And I say that single unifying vision is God. Now, a person can debate and say, well, it's not a great work, but then
can I push back on the unifying vision? I think there's a problem with what you just said, and I think I can demonstrate it to you.
Okay.
If God was the ultimate driver, if God was the unifying vision, if the Bible and all of its authors really are God-breathed and God-inspired, why then are we able to determine when the scribe changes? Why do we have the documentary hypothesis? Because what we should have is a very clear pattern of speech and writing. This is the reason that when somebody writes an anonymous post on Facebook, if they're a public figure and we've got lots of writings from them in the past, we can pretty accurately determine that it was probably them, is because everybody has a particular pattern of speech and writing that is unique, very much like our fingerprints and the number of hairs on our butts. But yeah, I think you're on shakier ground with that. If you say that God is the one that is actually inspiring everything, then you have to now come to terms with why there is clearly different authorship. So we know when priests are writing versus the Yahwehs, like we do, and it's pretty obvious. So
keep in mind that I never said that God directly authored the Bible. Of course, he inspired it, which means he used human beings.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
Their own style, their own syntax. Right.
But so then you're saying that God is not as powerful as them, and that they absolutely could have been changing the message from God from the beginning. See, that's what I'm saying. If you go this route, you're on way shakier ground, because now you're saying somehow God is not capable of telling his creation what to do. He can't actually make them do anything. He can't actually put his will into effect, which then puts you back on this spot of having to say, well, then how do I know the Bible is actually God-breathed from the beginning? You then have to determine what parts of the Bible are directly from God's mouth as this kind of main driving force. So again, I just think all of this is on shaky ground.
Okay. Just one last thought then. What I am saying, okay, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that God is the unifying vision behind all these various writers and styles. He's the unifying vision, meaning the overarching singular unifying vision that makes the whole thing coherent. Not any individual writer or scribe or anything. God is that unifying vision.
Only he's not, and that's the problem. Because many the earlier works in the Bible were written by people who did not believe in a single God. And in fact, what we have as God now is an amalgamation of at least El, of at least Yahweh, and of at least Baal. That's 3 gods out of an area that believed in many, many different gods. And they also believed that God had a consort that passed down from, sorry, I forget which ones, whether El or Yahweh was the father. I think El was the greater God to begin with. It had a consort, and then his son, Yahweh, actually inherited that consort before these things became amalgamated. So they're not actually talking about a single God figure. The Bible doesn't talk about a single God. That's the modern Christian interpretation of what the Bible teaches. And to say, you know, even that aside, pushing that entirely aside, again, we can take the Buddhist Tipitaka, which is 11 times longer than the Bible, and we can say that is written about a single thing, the Dharma. That is the concentration, the focus of the Dharma. That does not mean that it makes it true, just because it has a single focus.
Right. Okay, so to wrap it up, you know, because I know it's time to go. So you would deny that the Bible is a great work, even if you don't like it.
No, neither of us have said that.
No one has said it's not a great work.
Neither of us have said it's not a great work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've only when we pushed back on that initially, Aaron, like really we were just coming at from the perspective of like, what is your criteria for determining this? And we didn't exactly get that, but that's okay. Like, I really do. I think this was a really good call, Aaron. I think it was great because it feels to me like you are thinking, like you are actually engaging, you know, with the points that we're bringing up.
That.
Yeah. So please, like, call us back, man.
Right.
Again, and rewatch this. Actually,
Hey,
that's one thing a lot of people don't do. They don't rewatch the call. So.
You bet. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. Yeah,
thanks, Aaron.
Again, even if I felt like it, you know, stuff was on shaky ground that he was saying, again, it did feel to me like he was, you know, trying to engage more so than some of our other callers. So I always appreciate that.
Back. Yeah. I'd like him to call back, and
Absolutely.
I think we can have lots of productive conversations with him.